Hello and welcome back to Josh Talks About Stuff, the show where Josh talks about stuff. It's good to have you back on another Thursday. So, I was thinking about a few things this week, and this is going to probably sound a bit mundane, so I don't want to throw this at you, but it's actually something that really impacted my life quite substantially. And it sounds so simple, but it's keeping a diary or a journal. Now, I've had a lot of sort of hit and misses with this over time. I've tried to do it in the past. I've tried to set up journals. I've tried to do it online in Google Docs, and I've tried to do it through. I've had God knows how many of these journals. I'm holding one right now, actually, but it never really clicked because I guess I was trying to treat it like a write about my day, talk about what I've done, and always feel like I'm trying to strive to write something down. And in a way, the main reason I got into it was I thought that it would be a great place to hold myself accountable. What I mean by that is, think of it this way. It's kind of like when you've got, like, say, a teacher, like a guitar teacher or something like that. Every week you've got someone who's holding you accountable to try and learn a certain amount of things. You know, you do your scales and whatnot, and then you'll come back next week and you might learn like another riff of a song, and you learn another bit and a bit and a bit and a bit, and you sort of put it together, and over time it becomes something. Now, I kind of thought that, well, I've been inactive for a period of time. This is a long time ago, and I was stuck in this rut with work where I just kept going to work and you know how it goes. Just the old go to sleep, come back to work, rinse, repeat, have a free weekend, and it just felt like I was living this week where it was just the same week on repeat, recycling the same thing again and again and again. And yeah, some things would change. Maybe I might watch another movie or play another game, but I like to think of measuring my life in experiences, and I just wasn't having any new experiences. So I thought, okay, well, what I'll do this time is how about I pick up a diary and then I can hold myself accountable to having something new to write in it every day. And it worked for a bit. Like, I'd always have to write a new thing I learned, or I'd write about a new thing I did and try and push myself to go out. It's sort of like when you see people, say, on Instagram and whatnot, and there might be like an influencer or something, and they're always trying to chase the dragon of finding that new thing, trying to find that new activity that they can do, that new hype train to jump on. And in a way, it is kind of positive because it's kind of keeping you, you're holding yourself to this standard that you're always going to be doing a new thing and accomplishing a new goal. But it's tiring after a while, and I found it just kind of burned me out because I wasn't doing things and documenting my life. I was documenting this idea of what I wanted my life to be rather than what my life actually was. And even then, it wasn't even this idea of what I wanted my life to be. It wasn't even my goals. It was just trying to find stuff to do. And look, I did accomplish a few things, which was okay, but it was all sort of for the wrong reasons. And it honestly didn't click until years later. I started this thing just in a Google Docs document, and I just keep that there open every night on my laptop. And I decided, all right, no dates now. Continuing in my new diary, I don't write dates or anything like that. But the idea was, it's just going to be what I called my free form journal. This thing where whatever sort of came to mind, if I wanted to write into it, I could. If I wanted to not write into it for months, then I wouldn't. And that worked for a time, but it just felt like a chore going back to it. And honestly, it wasn't until, God, I'd probably say 6 months ago where it kind of clicked, and I started having these goals and I started having these things. Like, this whole podcast is kind of one of them. Things that I wanted to do, and things weren't going anywhere with acting because of COVID and whatnot. There just wasn't opportunities. And I thought, okay, well, how can I make my own opportunities? And I started writing down my plans, and I didn't have anything to write it down. I didn't have any scrap paper. And I just picked up this old diary, dusted it off, and quite literally dusted it off because it was filthy. And I started writing in it. And then I realized what worked for me. And this is why I think it's very subjective, because some people, journaling is great and they can just write about their day, whatever happened, whether it was amazing or mundane, and that's fantastic. But for me, it just became like almost like a save point for my brain. Anytime like a thought came into my head, now I get a lot of passing thoughts and things that, crop up all the time, and sometimes it's just a mess, and I lose track of things very easy. So I started writing things down, like all these little ideas, little anecdotes, things that happened to me during the day. And then suddenly everything changed and my perspective changed. And I found that instead of, holding myself accountable to just writing in this journal, it wasn't a chore anymore. I It wasn't even about journaling anymore. It wasn't about keeping a diary. It wasn't about any of that. This was just an apparatus that I used to just document whatever was there, just being something to just throw pen and paper together to just get this idea on canvas so I'd have something to just reflect back on so I can flip through my thoughts. And it's helped me immeasurably to the point where even just working through thoughts and so on, when I've got a problem, like a personal problem or anything like that, I've been writing things down, and then I can kind of think about it and then think about how my perspective has changed. And say a week later or a month later or 2 months later, I can look back on it and then think, okay, well, maybe I've got a different perspective now. Maybe things are different, and maybe I can attack this problem in a different way, in maybe a different way I hadn't even thought of. It's the same way that people talk about mathematics, where sometimes that you get to a problem that you can't get past and you're just hitting this roadblock and you just can't get there. So you skip it, you do everything else, and then you come back to it. But subconsciously, your brain is still working through that issue. And then sometimes it kind of just clicks and you just think, oh, of course, it's so simple now. So that's something that's taken me a really long time. And honestly, if you're ever in a place in your life where you're thinking that maybe things aren't going anywhere, or maybe you're feeling like you're stuck in a rut, or you want to get out of some issue, or you want to just make a change and you want to do something new, do something different, or let's even say you've got a goal and you're just not sure how to get there. I found, me personally, having a journal or a diary, I don't really know how to use those words properly, but having a journal or a diary, I honestly think that it's helped me a lot because I've been able to just work through those at a different pace and I don't feel bogged down. And that's the other thing too. I think a lot of it is baggage too. It's kind of like when you've got like a lot of stuff around the house. When you throw things down, things start to weigh you down, and it's the same with thoughts. And you have these thoughts that are stuck in your head. Even if you vent them to other people, to a degree it helps. But I think that when you actually write them down and then you have this physical thing where you can look at that page and you can see your thoughts, for me, it's almost like this transference, that energy, that time that I've put into all of these negative thoughts or even these tiring plans that I've been pushing myself to achieve. By putting them on paper, there's this feeling of, like I said, transference, that I'm transferring it straight onto that page and it's no longer with me anymore and I'm able to give up that baggage. So I think if you're feeling like that, maybe it's time to give that a crack. Because honestly, it's been just sort of life-changing for me. It's interesting because I write about everything. I write about my time working in sales, for instance, which like that was something I never thought I'd really even get into. Now, I've been told from an early age just to avoid, not from family so much, but just friends and peers and teachers, and you run into all sorts of people in your life, and people generally have sort of shared opinions after a while. Just like people say, don't buy a rotary engine, and then you drive one and you think, oh, this isn't so bad. Well, I thought it was going to be the same thing with, or don't have a motorcycle. And yeah, I listened to that advice for a long time, which is kind of disappointing. But I always heard, don't get into sales. And I get it. I get what the people are talking about. And it's kind of funny because I have a different perspective on this, and I have, like, my views completely changed. And I'll also agree with them and say, don't get into sales either. But for a completely different reason. Now, what most people are thinking of is they say, don't get into sales because it's largely commission based. And if you don't hit your targets, then A, you're probably not going to keep your job because they want to get you there, keep holding up, your KPIs and whatnot, because it's in the business's interest that you sell things, which is fair enough. The other reason they say it is there's a lot of pressure on you as a salesman to try and, get those sales, get those targets, and you have to really scrounge around and try and dig and do all the stuff to get there. which to a degree is correct. But for me, it wasn't about the commission structure. That's not what killed sales for me. What really did it though was just this desensitization that I got and this almost loss of grounding or loss of empathy. And it's very strange how quickly it happens too, because you don't expect it. It's kind of interesting when I think about it, because you know those people that you always think of as salesmen. You think of those shady, dodgy used car salesmen, and they're always trying to do some dodgy scam to try and take your money. The thing is, that's a reality, and it's mind blowing. Now, look, I'm not gonna sit here and throw people under the bus or anything like that, because I've worked with some fantastic salesmen. So not everyone is like that. I've worked with some people who are by the book, who are really good, who are just doing their thing, and they're good at sales. They're genuinely good at sales because they're good at getting customers' trust. They're trustworthy people. They're people that you could easily have as a friend, and I have them as friends, and that's great. But not everyone's like that. And it's kind of that problem that you see with a lot of corporate stuff too, that there's two ways of getting to success. There's the good and honest way, which is generally a little bit more difficult. And then there's the other way, which is standing on people's necks to try and get to success, which is apparently easier. And sadly, that's the more common way of getting across through sales, which is sad. Instead of trying to do honest things to get people's trust, it's so much easier and so much more efficient. And it's horrible to say this, but to try and do dodgy little practices here and there. And I'm not going to go too much into specifics because I really don't, people who know where I used to work and so on, I really don't want to throw people under the bus. I don't want people to make any reports or anything like that. Because like I said, I worked with some genuinely fantastic people that I really liked, who were my friends, and I really respect them too. But they'll know exactly who I'm talking about as well. When I say that not everyone's committed to honesty in the same way. But what I really wanted to sort of talk about there is just that change that happens in your head though, because I could feel it too. And it's sad. It's changed the way that I even look at any business that has a commission structure now. Because when people come into a business, I remember being the shopper. So I used to go to different shops like I don't, like I said, I'm not going to name any names, but different department stores or motorcycle shops or car places or whatnot. And some of them had a commission structure in place. And as a consumer, I would go in there, I'd browse, I'd occasionally buy something, and everything would be fine. But it's just interesting how much that perspective changed on how I feel going into those shops now. Because a lot of the time, when you go into one of those shops, people aren't looking at you like a prospective customer, or they're not looking at you like just someone off the street, like a guy going in there and just having a look at some things. They want you to buy something. They need you to buy something. And often there's a lot of these phrases I've heard in sales as well, which is, it's not about what the customer wants, you tell them what to want. And yeah, it's a typical sales thing you'll hear all the time. It's all about marketing. It's about getting emotional response from the customer to get them into a state of trying to, well, not really trying. It's more like getting them into an emotional state where they're easier to sort of influence down a certain direction. The general process is basically when the customer comes in, you want to try and get like a meet and greet going pretty quickly, get them on your side, show that it's like, we're a friendly kind of business and whatnot. But then you want to kind of bring a product into it and then get this engagement with the customer so that you've got this, I guess, emotional response. You try and build it up in their head. You try and bring out this whatever it is that the customer wants out of it. So let's say that you're selling, I don't know, something I've never done before, like camping equipment or something, and they're looking at bags and backpacks, and maybe they need a backpack that, like, their goals, when you find out what their goals are, is, say, carrying a lot of things because they're the type of person who has lots of luggage. So with someone like that, then you'll start, because it's not worth talking about like drink bottle holders if they're not someone who's going to use that. It's not worth talking about Alpine stuff that maybe this bag is fantastic to use out in the snow if they're only ever going to be camping in like a muddy forest or something. So you want to talk about the features that are great with them. And this all goes on and on and on. But everything that you say, it's all purposeful. It all has a reason to be said there. But from the customer's perspective, they think, and you want to make them think this, that the whole thing is just a conversation. You're just having fun with them. They don't know at this point in time that there's actually a sales pitch involved in it. But what sort of changes is this light switch moment where you stop seeing these customers as people and you start seeing them as dollar signs, and it's disgusting. And it's weird because it happens so quickly too. I remember the same thing happened in healthcare actually. Now, some of you will know this already, but I worked in nursing for a number of years, and it's really interesting that you're dealing with patients who are people's parents or they're people's kids or people's dads and whatnot, grandparents, you name it. And after a while, like I hate saying this, it's not that you stop seeing them as people, but you start to see them as patients. You start to see them as people to report, to write reports on, people to give medication to, patients to do this with. And everything becomes so process driven. And because time management in both those industries is so imperative, because you've got so many things to do, so many things to juggle, you don't have time to empathize with people on the same degree that you used to, or the same degree that you empathize with them in the real world. Because it's not the real world, it's a business environment. And they're two very, very different things. And it's so weird to see that, and it's so weird to feel that change. And that's ultimately why I got out of working in healthcare for a period, because I could feel that change was happening to me. And I didn't like it, and I didn't want to be one of those people who burns out and then starts treating people differently. And I thought, you know what? We'll call it quits before then. And the same thing with like sales to a degree. I noticed that I started to sort of see people differently, and it's horrible. And I remember some of the comments that I'd hear in sales too, when customers go in to just look around, and how annoyed some of the staff would get that these, like, how dare these people come in and just browse. They might be doing brand research. They might be, no one wants to buy an expensive product. Maybe they just want to buy something cheap, but then people will rag on them for being cheap. They don't want to spend a lot of money. How dare they? And that's because it's all driven, this mindset's entirely driven by this commission structure that people they need to spend big in there, otherwise they're not a real customer. So now when I go into a lot of these shops, I have that in the back of my mind, and I'm constantly thinking now about what are these sales staff thinking when I'm in here? Are they eyeing me? Are they thinking this? Are they thinking those same thoughts? Are they looking at me and the second I leave without buying something because maybe what I was looking for wasn't there, are they going to start bad-mouthing me behind my back? And it's a horrible feeling. I hate it now. And it's really changed the way I see commission-based retail. Because I think that on paper, commission makes sense to try and enhance customer service to a degree, because if they want your business, then they're going to bend over backwards for you and give you better service to try and, get your money from you to get that commission. But that's not what happens. Instead, people have this almost entitlement that they deserve a sale from you. So they'll do all these dodgy things to try and manipulate you, to try and push you into getting a sale, to try and emotionally guilt trip you or stand over you, or use phrases like, oh, you're not man enough to buy this, are you? Like horrible things like that. Or talk about their relationships and how like their partner would probably prefer someone who is more decisive and could buy something. I've seen horrible things like that happen in a sales environment. Belittling customers or standing in front of a door and blocking them from leaving unless they buy something. It's absolutely disgusting. And that's what happens when you have a commission structure, because you change people into predators. They're like wolves, and everyone who walks into that place is prey. And that's how they see them. And they're just ready to sink their teeth into them to get that commission out of them. So I honestly think that if you want to have a better structure, take out that commission element so people don't have a vested interest in this. And I think you'll get a more honest, better better customer satisfaction, and I think you'll probably sell more, honestly. I know that a lot of people think that if you're going to have a commission-based structure in a business, then uh, it's probably going to bring more brand loyalty to the employees. But from what I've seen, I don't think so. Having a reason to enjoy a brand because you've got a vested interest in it, I think that's very different to having a reason to enjoy a brand because you believe in it. And from a customer perspective, pardon me, from a customer perspective, I can tell straight away, and it's horrible. One thing I found interesting though, just in on a sort of semi kind of a bridge topic, when I mentioned how people think about you or the things that they say about you the second that you leave, it got me thinking about, I guess the simple way to think about it is insecurity in general, but do you ever go through these moments where you're chatting to people and then sometimes people might praise you and they might say that, oh, that's really good. Wow, you're really smart or something like that. They'll do these things that sort of they'll compliment you in some way that kind of inflates your ego, which is good in a way because it makes you feel good. But do you ever feel this sudden feeling of dread, this burden that maybe they think more highly of me than I can actually deliver? What if I can't? What if they think I'm this profound, intelligent person with all these philosophical ideas and I can't measure up to that? And what if I'm just empty inside? And what if I don't have that capacity to meet that expectation? And it's not about them putting the expectation on you and being disappointed because that's their problem. But it's you putting this expectation on yourself then and thinking like, do I have to deliver to this? Because I've felt that. I felt that a number of times. And this horrifying feeling that maybe people will find out that there's just nothing to you. You know, there's nothing behind your eyes. There's just every part of your personality is just surface level and there's no depth to you. There's no depth to your personality. Because I've felt that many times and I've always had this thought in the back of my head like how do they interpret what I'm actually saying? Are they reading into this too much? Are they building this idea in their mind that things I'm saying are more profound or more intelligible than I actually am? Because the pressure of that is immense. Of feeling that this feeling inside that maybe I can't deliver that. And I feel that maybe sometimes it's not that I'm disappointing them, but it's sad for them because I can't give them this thing that would make them happy. So if you feel that way, I think that's perfectly normal, and I think that's kind of something that's probably good to have. I know it sounds kind of counterintuitive to say that's good to have, but I think maybe it is kind of good to have that sort of groundedness there. Because if you go down that path of thinking that all these self-aggrandizing things are correct, I am more intelligent, I am better than I thought I was, I am this amazing philosopher out there, and I can do all these things, and I have these amazing thoughts, and I can get out there, and I can tackle the world and tell them everything. And then one day someone calls your bluff on that, and then you're up against someone who genuinely is all those things, and you maybe don't measure up to that. So I think maybe it is good to have that groundedness there. But it is one thing I definitely wanted to mention though, because I think honestly there is an issue that some of us can have, which is this idea of putting too much expectation on ourselves. This idea that everyone has to be a success, everybody has to be a hero, we all have to be able to be the person who can save the world. Maybe don't put the world on your own shoulders, because you don't have to. Maybe focus on something that you actually enjoy instead. Maybe that's more important. Not everyone has to achieve anything, because ultimately there's a big burden of responsibility that comes with achievement too. Which actually, I was thinking about burden of responsibility too, because people ask this question, and you've been asked this question, no doubt, as well. If you had an unlimited amount of money, what car would you buy or what motorbike would you buy? And I used to think about that a lot. And I came to this realization that I think like if I had a unlimited budget, yes, I would love to own like an F40 or something. That'd be amazing. I would love it. Or I would love that new Daytona Moto 2 bike that Triumph made. It would be so good. But then this horrifying thought hit, which is the burden of responsibility. This idea that an F40 is not just a normal car. It's irreplaceable. And just think about that for a moment. The fact that it's irreplaceable, you can never get another. I mean, you probably find another one secondhand somewhere, but there's very limited numbers of these things around. Or the fact that there's only 765 of those Moto 2s ever made, and that's it. Like, that is a terrifying thought to have. And the idea of, like, if it gets stolen, it's gone. If someone gets it, like that feeling of just knowing that every time you go to bed and you leave that in your garage, if you wake up the next morning and it's gone because it's the most sought after vehicle in the world, then that's it. It's gone. Even if you get your insurance payoff, you're probably never going to find another one for sale again. You're probably never going to be able to replace that again. And then the idea of like, where do you drive it? Where do you take it? I can't just take it to Kmart. What if someone doors it? What if someone runs a trolley into it? And then think about like the people that will want to come up and take photos of it constantly. The idea of that is just horrifying to me. I find it's like terrifying, this idea of just having this burden with me. And that's exactly what it would become. This idea of this burden that I've got, like I've subscribed my life to just having this constantly fragile Fabergé egg of a car or bike that I could just lose and it's gone forever. I don't think I could deal with that. So I think my goal vehicles have sort of my ultimate grandiose gold vehicles. I don't think that they're big, expensive, rare vehicles like that. Honestly, it's stuff that's replaceable that because like I'm not anal about car detailing or bike detailing. I'm terrible at it. Yes, I keep them clean for the most part, but I hate detailing. I prefer just getting in and driving it, and I love how my vehicles look, but I don't like the maintenance side of things. Like in servicing and stuff, I'm all over that. That's fine. They're just like the keeping things like tidy and clean and all that kind of jazz. It's never been something that's really resonated with me. I love other people's clean cars. But then little things like, I don't like to sweat the small stuff because at the end of the day, like things happen. Stone chips happen. Like my CBR, I don't think I've really spoken about this. So my CBR when I got it, the not the 600, but the 1000, it was pretty good. It had not brand new, but it had the suspension was fully rebuilt, never missed a beat with servicing. Mechanically, it was A1, and it rode like immaculate when I got it too, and it still does to this day. Fantastic bike, but aesthetically, it wasn't great, and that's why I got it a little bit cheaper than normal. I got it like a little bit cheaper than market value for what it was, not by much, but enough to sort of necessitate the price. Now, like I said, it wasn't aesthetically great. It had been dropped. And I've said this in the last episode too. Bikes get dropped. It's what happens. And every bike has been dropped pretty much. And everyone who's owned a bike has dropped a bike at some stage. And you know what? If they say they haven't, they're either full of it or they hardly ride or they haven't touched their bike. And you know what? There's a lot of people who hardly ride. Like I saw a Ducati Panigale. I think it was 5 years old, and it had done something like 3,000 or 4,000 Ks on it. So like not even 1,000 Ks a year, hardly been touched. And that's the reality for a lot of bikes. I saw an R1 about a week ago as well. I think that was like 3 years old and had done like 1,200 Ks. Because people just keep them in their lounge room. They'll take them out every once in a while. A lot of people who have a lot of these bikes, they might work crazy hours and they just take it out once a weekend on like an hour ride and that's it. And then it stays in the garage all summer. So yeah, I wasn't surprised in the least that my CBR had been dropped in the past. But like no frame damage, nothing like that, no Viv. It was just fairings. So I replaced all the fairings on it myself, and I got some new factory ones that were completely mint and great. And got all the, like, some people had taken the stickers off the swing arm at one stage. I don't think it was this owner, but the previous owner, who was the guy who bought it new. Now, the Fireblade I bought, when I bought it, it was white, but it had the wrong generation fairings on it. So mine's a 2012, and it had like 2014 or 2015 white and black fairings on it. And I knew straight away they were the wrong ones. So what I did was I rang Vic Roads, and I asked them what the color of the vehicle was originally registered as, and they let me know it was red, and I thought it was red because there was only 3 colors that bike could come in. So I ended up getting some red fairings for it, re-stickered it and everything with OEM stickers. The whole works, got it mint. Everything is absolutely slick as, like it was factory fresh, and I love that, mint and stock. But now it's full of stone chips because my bike gets ridden, and going back to what I said, it is what it is. I really sweat the small stuff. But on something like a Triumph Moto 2, where it's got like full carbon body on it, I don't want to be the guy who drops that thing and then that's it. It's done. I don't want to be the guy who takes his F40 out to the twisties and comes back and it's full of just stone chips in the front of it. Because I can't just fix that. It's not the same. This is a one-off car with like really thin painted, like exceptionally thin paint on it, so you can see the carbon through the actual red paint. Like, it's an amazing vehicle. I love it. But just the burden of responsibility of that, it just does my head in. So yeah, I think I would go for something that's a little bit more replaceable. Like, say, like I know these cars are bordering on getting rare now, but there's still plenty of them. Like an FD RX-7 would be perfect. I would kill for an FD. Or even like I don't really have any dream bikes, to be honest. I kind of just am happy with what I've got. But I do aspire, I think I said this in the past as well, I do aspire to have something like a Triumph Speed Twin. That's my current dream bike. I just really wish it came with those Öhlins forks though. One thing I kind of wanted to mention too is I sort of touched on this really briefly early on about riding and what I like about it, but I don't think I really got into why I actually started getting into bikes and why I specifically chose that ZX2R. Now, I said in, I think, the last episode that I don't recommend getting one of those bikes, and I'll stand by it, that a lot of the reason I got the ZX2R, it was a bit of nostalgia and also a bit of hype. So the real thing is why I got into bikes in general though, and why I keep riding them and what I like about them. Now, I've grown up with bikes all my life, and I'm not going to go too far into that because I don't want to double up on what I've said in the past there. But the big thing is though, why I'm into them is kind of what I got into them for. And that really comes down to the fact that I'm always learning something. Every single time I get on the bike, I just feel like I'm constantly just refining something, constantly learning. Everything is practice. Whether I'm going out to twisty roads or practicing in a car park, or if I'm just going to a friend's place, not that we can do that these days, or I'm going to the shops, or I'm going out to, wherever it is, I'm going out exploring on it and whatnot. I'm always refining something. There's always some element of my riding that I'm getting better. Whether I'm learning to trail brake better, or I'm getting better at my, like throttle control, or I'm getting better at all sorts of things. And I just love that element to it. I'm getting better at selecting better lines. I'm more aware of traffic. I'm more aware of road hazards. I'm constantly scanning things. And while I'm doing that, everything else in my brain is just turned off. It's just this single focus. I don't think about music. I don't think about friends. I don't think about movies. I don't think about podcasting. I don't think about anything. All I'm thinking about is just what I'm doing. And even more so, I try not to even these days have a destination in mind. I just want to just treat every road as just data. just data that's in front of me. I might have a vague destination of where I think I might be heading, but I just want to follow the roads and just let that information that's around me go straight through my eyes into my brain, make an informed decision about how I need to react to a scenario, and just keep going from there. And that makes me really happy. It's the one thing that keeps me so interested in it. And it just feels like I'm always working towards something new. And I absolutely love that. But the reason I chose the ZX2R, well, ZXR 250C to be specifically accurate on what that is ultimately because it's a combination of two reasons. I did say nostalgia, and that was back in the 90s. I remember this really specific time. I think I was heading to get Chinese food with my parents or something, and we're heading through this place called Belmont, and right near the library, there was this guy getting off this absolutely mint brand new Kawasaki ZXR 750, and it was like the classic. It's not really tricolor. I don't know what. I think I call it KRT or something. Kawasaki Racing Team colors, where it's like green on white on blue stripes down the side of it diagonally. And I saw this thing, and this guy had full green leathers, and it just has stuck in my mind forever. Like I always just, that was just my pinnacle bike. I just loved it. I fell in love with it right then and there. And the ZX2R, which is Lambs approved, has pretty much the same shape as that bike, especially the ZX2RA or ZXR 250A. It has pretty much exactly the same lines. It has the same snorkels going into the front of it too, because it is basically just like a baby version of the big thing. It's all styled after that, in the same way that the mini Fireblade, the CBR 250RR, is heavily based off the CBR 900, but just scaled right down. And I absolutely loved it. So that was one of the main reasons I was after a ZX2R, but I was on the fence though, because I also was looking for a CBR 250RR, which is the MC22. And it's sort of a twofold reasons I got into this. It was back at this place called Garage Cafe. A friend of mine, Michelle, had one there. And I have spoken about this, but there's a second element I haven't gone into, which is I saw hers and it was just mint and white with red wheels and everything, and it was so cool. And I heard the sound of it just pinging off the limiter, and it was amazing. And I was like, wow, this feels like something I could do. And then I went home and I did copious amounts of research, and just this video, it was a Riding with Tom video, and he's absolutely blasting this tricolor MC22 all through Melbourne. And it just clicked with me. It's what I wanted. So yeah, I went out and went shopping for these two bikes, either a CBR 250, and I actually had one that I was going to see on the Monday, and I was organized to go see this one on the Monday, and this was a Friday, and I just happened to refresh Gumtree that day, and I saw that a ZX2R got listed that day, and I just went there the second day after, which was Saturday, and just lo and behold, I took it for a test ride and I bought it. I couldn't say no. So it just kind of clicked like that was something I had to do. And I fell in love with it. It was a fantastic bike to get into. Weird bike to get into though, because no one knew anything about it. You almost never see them around. And it's strange too, because the bike community was really odd. No one really knew much about them, but also people would either look down on them massively for being a 250, because the bike community was very different then. So I got into bikes right before Club 250 in Australia took off. And I have to say, there used to be a lot of animosity towards small bikes back then. They weren't encouraged. It was either you were on a leader bike, you were on a big boy bike, you were on a 600 or something like that. Everything that wasn't one of those big bikes was just a piece of crap. And I used to get looked down on. I used to get laughed at on the 250 all the time, and it was really disappointing. These days, I'm glad that those attitudes have changed, and people sort of see those little inline 4 250s as real bikes these days. But just there was this horrible period there, and I'm glad that the bike community has changed, but honestly, that community has a long way to go still. I know some of you are going to be mad hearing that, but it's the honest truth. There's a lot of things that need to change. Like there's a lot of blatant, horrible misogyny in that community that has to change. The way that the second that any woman is into a bike, suddenly they're just treated like a sex object. Everyone wants to go out for a ride with whoever this new lady is. You even see it on bike posts as well, which is gross. You'll see a single guy or whatever just post about like, hey, I'm just moved to this area and I want to meet some bike friends and whatnot. And that's great. And you'll see maybe 15 comments on it. You see the same post that a woman's posted, and then you're looking at like 450 comments straight off the bat within the first hour. It's absolutely nuts. And then constantly people are spamming them with private messages as well, asking them to hang out. And it's, it's never just a hangout. It's just sleazy old men trying to hook up with a young lady, and it's gross. So yeah, that's one thing that needs to change. And the other thing that needs to change is this constant, just this idea of constant, I don't know if it's compensation or this competition, this competitiveness that people have with one another. That's got to change as well, because everything is just about this constant comparison about how fast I can go, how much quicker I am than you. You have more chicken strips than me, so I am a better motorcyclist than you because I've used more tire. All this stuff is ridiculous, and I'm going to go do a whole thing on this and a whole episode on how ridiculous chicken strips and all that kind of stuff is, but I did want to touch on it today because it is something that goes through my mind quite a lot. Because it's such a nice and honest hobby, writing, that I just don't see why it needs this whole aesthetic with all these people comparing their egos over everything. And it's honestly one of the main reasons that I personally ride alone. I have some good friends that I do go riding with, but it's never like group rides. I like to ride with maybe 1 or 2 or maximum 3 other riders, but any more than 4 riders, then I'm out. I don't like it. Because there's this thing that happens in people's brains when more people go, and everyone starts to sort of race each other. It becomes this idea like it's not the journey anymore, it's the destination, and it's about how fast you get there. It's about how quick you go. It's about how much lean angle you get going there, how fast you hit those apexes. And it's terrifying because these are public roads. It's not just you, there's other motorists. Like, what happens if you're going around that corner and you low slide your bike straight out in front of like a family in a car, and they swerve and smash into a tree and kill their children? Good job. Was it worth it? That's the kind of stuff that goes through my head, and I just think I don't have time for that anymore. And I'm only getting older, and I want to keep getting older. I don't want to just live my life a quarter mile at a time and then I'm dead. For what? So I could get bragging rights about how I got elbowed down on Reefton or something? It's insanity. No one needs to do that. And it's terrifying. I will go into this in a lot more depth in a future episode because I think this subject really deserves more time than I can give you in the last couple of minutes of this episode. But it is just a final thought that I kind of wanted to touch on because it has a lot of meaning to me, and it is something that I've thought about quite a lot. And because I think it is a hobby that I want to share with a lot more people. It is something that I really want to go into more with others, and I love going for rides with new riders as well. And I'm no instructor or anything like that. I don't try and police people or tell people the better way of doing things, but I think it is good for the soul to a degree. There's something zen about just being you and your thoughts and just single rider and not treating it as transport. There's never been a time I've gotten on my bike and it's felt like a chore. I've always loved it. It makes me happy. Even on really rough days at work, it'd be the one thing that just I look forward to, that just clicks and makes me feel like it was worth it. By the time I get home, I'm in a different mood. Even if I was upset, even if I was angry, even if it felt like the world was ending and I had the worst day in the world, I'd jump on my bike and honestly, within like the first 3 minutes of riding home, my whole attitude has changed. And I love that. And I wish I could share that with more people. So that is a wrap today. And that is the end of another episode. Thank you for listening. And we'll see you again. Say, how's next Thursday sound?